Good evening. Welcome to the Writers' Festival and what may well be our final virtual event. The podcast will continue through the summer and possibly beyond, but if all goes to plan, we'll be fully back into in-person programming this fall. Rest assured, we will be maintaining the ability for ticket holders to watch from home if they're not comfortable or not able to gather with us in person. My name is Sean, and I want to begin, as always, by thanking you for supporting authors and booksellers through these difficult times. Our official bookseller is Perfect Books on Elgin Street, and the only thing better than a great book is a great book bought from an independent bookseller. I'm broadcasting from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg. We at the festival recognize our obligation as settlers on this land to work to repair the harms perpetrated upon First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous communities, and acknowledge the ongoing trauma colonialism continues to inflict. Special thanks to all our donors and to all of you for tuning in. I also want to acknowledge the support of the Government of Canada, the Government of Ontario, the City of Ottawa, the Ontario Arts Council, the Canada Council for the Arts, Carleton University, and CBC. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I hope you're all subscribed to our podcast. Last week's episodes featured Amitav Ghosh and Chloe Cooper-Jones, and this week we spotlight Alexander MacLeod and Jean Van Loon. Starting tomorrow, our Republic of Childhood Youth program will be delivering mindfulness workshops as part of the Ottawa Children's Festival. Then we've got 2 more in-person events coming up before the fall season. On June 14th, we have Sarah Pauly in conversation with Julie Lalonde. And in July, it's the return of Kathy Reichs as we celebrate her 21st book in the Bones series, Cold, Cold Bones. Now, it is my very great pleasure to hand it over to our host for this evening, New York Times bestseller, Shari Lapena. We were lucky enough to host her last year in celebration of her global bestseller, Not a Happy Family. That conversation is available to watch free and on demand, alongside tonight's conversation and more than 200 other author interviews recorded during the pandemic. Let's give a warm virtual welcome to our host this evening, Shari Lapena.
Hello, everybody. So good to be here, and I'm so happy to be hosting Linwood Barclay. I've been a huge fan of Linwood's from, many, many years ago. Linwood is a New York Times bestselling and internationally bestselling author with 20 books to his credit. He has worked in newspapers before turning to writing crime novels. His books have been translated into more than 24 languages and have sold millions of copies. And he counts Stephen King among his fans. He's a star in the firmament of Canadian thriller writers. And a fun fact, it was Linwood's novel, No Time for Goodbye, that inspired me to write my first thriller. So welcome, Linwood, and I look forward to our chat tonight about your new book, Take Your Breath Away.
Hi, Shari. It's nice to see you. Nice to be here. And if No Time for Goodbye was the inspiration, where's my cut? Where's my... You know what I mean? So, but that's fine. It's fine. No big deal.
I know. But it's true. I read that book and I thought, oh my God, it's time I wrote a thriller. And then, of course, I stalked your agent, and then the rest is history. And now we're buds. So there you go. But that book really... Go ahead.
I'm that inspired you. That was a big deal, that book, for me too, because that was my 5th novel. A lot of people think it was my first, but it was my 5th, and it was the one that kind of broke me out and changed my life, allowed me to give up the day job. So that one was. And I have really exciting news tonight. Our mutual agent called and said that my book is #1 in the Amazon category of Canadian fiction by women. So I'm really excited that I'm now #1 in novels in Canada by women. So that's a first for me. And and news,
I bet it is.
Yeah, news on many fronts. So
Canada's weird that way. We don't have the same boundaries as other people. Well, if I ever make a best-selling male author, I'll certainly let you know.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
That's weird. So before we get started on Take Your Breath Away, I just wanted to congratulate you also on your previous novel, last year's novel, Find You First. I understand is up shortlisted for a Dagger Award in the UK, which is huge.
Yeah, it's up for the there's a lot of categories, but it's up for the Ian Fleming Steel Dagger Award. They had a long list. They did a short list of 5, and I made the short list. I was nominated for that once before for the long list, but this time I made the short list, so that's very nice, and I'm in very good company with
Oh
some
yeah,
really.
that's huge. I mean, you're there with S.A. Crosby and Laura Lippman and
I
Steve
forget.
Kavanaugh,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's a really good. It's a good group of people. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
yeah,
I hope you get it. That would look
and
nice on your shelf.
and we are, and you and I are both up, are we not, for the Canadian Crime Writers Best Novel?
We are, and we're in competition with each other.
Yeah, well,
Think,
you know,
are we not up
say,
for the same thing?
why
Yes.
don't we split with through arm wrestling, and we'll just do it that way.
Okay. Or we could do like beer pong. You want to do beer pong?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Or we could do a little quiz, see like, or a little quiz thing about our novels or something. I've read all your novels, so I could do it.
Okay, I was all right. Anyway, ask away.
Anyway,
What?
ask away. Okay, um, so is it today or yesterday that was the launch day for your North American launch for Take Your Breath
Yes,
Away? I've got it here. Love this book. I'm a fan. I've read all your books, and I love
yes,
this one.
yes, too.
Was it
Ever-
yesterday that it came out
Yesterday.
in North
Yeah.
America? Yesterday. Okay. Between you and me, I was all set to do this last night, and then I realized I had the wrong night. So I was so glad to find out that it was actually the next day and not the day before. So
Yeah.
anyway, it came out, launched in North America yesterday, but it's already been out in the UK and Ireland, and it's a bestseller in both those places, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It came out in February and did very, very well over there. And it comes out hits paperback, I think, in September over in UK and Ireland.
Hmm.
So we had a nice opening over there for it.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So tell us a bit about this novel. It's always so hard to talk about these. There's so many things I want to talk about this book that we can't really talk about without spoilers, especially when he gets the hand chopped off. I love that scene. But
Oh well,
tell us the basics, and then we can go a little bit more into the characters in the book without giving too much away.
sure. So, and instead, I know sometimes people do readings of these things, and I think you and I are kind of agreed that if you really want your audience to just know it off, you should read to them. And generally, people who tune into Writers Festival events already know how to read, so I don't see any point in reading to them. But I'd like to talk about what the book's about, and actually, I want to talk
Mhm.
about it in a different way before. And I want to imagine that you're a guy named Andrew. And 6 years ago, you went away for the weekend with like a fishing trip with your buddy, and when you came back, your wife was not there. She was gone, and she's been missing for 6 years, and the police think you probably had something to do with it, but they've never been able to prove it. And you know think maybe while you were away that you hired somebody to kill her and do so forth. And so you've decided to move out of the neighborhood. You've sold the house, and in fact, you sold it, and somebody bought the property, and they tore the house down, and they built a brand new house on that lot. You've moved to a different part of town where people don't know you, and you've had some drinking problems and so forth, kind of the suspicion and the whispering campaign against you. But 6 years on, you're finally kind of getting your life together, and you've met someone new, and she's moved in with you and so forth, and you're trying to get your contracting career back on track. And you get a call one morning that a car pulled into the driveway of where you used to live, and a woman got out of the car, and she looked at the house, and she said, "Where's my house? What's happened to my house? It's gone." And a neighbor looked and thought, "That sure looks like Brie, the woman who disappeared 6 years ago." And she gets back in the car and she takes off. And that's kind of our setup for Take Your Breath Away. That
It's
kind
such
of
a great
sums it.
setup. Yeah, it's just the thing about your books, Linwood. You always have such great hooks, such great setups. So, like whether it's No Time for Goodbye, where the teenage girl wakes up and her entire family has disappeared, or this one, the premises are always they're always very gripping, and you always want to know what's going to happen. So I want to know, as one writer to another, how do you come up with these great hooks?
Well, I go to Hooks R
Hooks
Us.
are difficult for me. So I love a good hook, and I don't find them that easy to come up with, but yours are always exceptional.
I always think about what ifs, and I guess sort of outlandish what ifs a lot of times. Now the idea I had it about at least maybe 3 years ago or more. I had this idea of a woman who seemingly has gone out for long enough to get groceries and comes home and she gets out of the car and says, "Where's my house? What happened to my house?" And I thought it was such a great opening, but I couldn't figure out. I didn't have an answer for it, and I didn't want to start until I knew and I had something that would work. And so finally, about a year and a half ago, I sat down and I thought, okay, let's just try to figure this out. And I got out a pen and paper and I started writing down 10 possible explanations for this. And I got rid of alien abduction pretty early. And I finally came up with something that I liked. And then I thought, okay, now I can write this. But my mind's always a what if this happened or what if that happened, and sometimes what ifs that are, I don't know, a little bit maybe not out there, but just I strive for something it's original or something that hasn't quite been done before. I mean, I'm thinking back to a few years ago when I did a book called Never Look Away, and I was thinking that there's what I like to do sometimes is take an opening that we're familiar with and then see if I can sort of turn it on its head. Like when I wrote Never Look Away, it's about a couple and their little kid and they go to an amusement park. And we all know the story. The kid goes missing at the amusement park, and I thought that's what this opening will be. The kid goes missing, and the husband and wife look what happened to the kid, and they're fanning out, running through the amusement park trying to find him. You think, oh, that's our opening. But then the dad finds the kid and comes back, and the wife never returns.
Yeah,
So,
I love that opening.
how can you take something that's, you mentioned the story about No Time for Goodbye and the 14-year-old girl who wakes up and the family's gone. And there had been a story in the Toronto News, decade and a half ago about a young girl who was abducted out of her house in the middle of the night, 14-year-old, and the family woke up in the morning and she was gone. And I thought of that story, and I thought, what if you turn that upside down, and the 14-year-old is the only one who's left? And so sometimes that's where the ideas come from. Is that I think of something that we're familiar with, and then think, what's a way that I can just turn it on its head? And
Oh,
and the hope is that there's floating in the ether out there somewhere at least one good idea a year. You know.
I have the same hope. One good idea a year that someone else isn't writing at the same time or didn't write last year. Um, yeah.
Well, and that's been a fear. When I wrote a book. God, it's got to be close to a decade ago. I wrote a book called Trust Your Eyes about a map obsessed guy who spends his whole day traveling the world virtually on a kind of Google Street View site and thinks he sees a murder in a window that's been captured by the passing Google Street View card. It could be months, years old. And I thought, someone else going to do that. Like it's just someone else going to do that idea. And so it was like, I have to do that right away. I have to do that immediately.
Yeah, someone's going to
And
do it. Yeah.
it's kind of an updated Rear Window. But every once in a while I was asked about this not too long ago, and I had this idea for when you go through the airport security and they take out your laptop and everybody's laptop looks the same if they got like a Mac Air or whatever. And the idea was that you pick up the wrong laptop if it comes through security. And I was thinking, what I'm going to do. And then Joseph Finder did it, and he wrote. I never forgive him for this. Never, never.
Well, I hope he did it before you wrote the whole thing.
Well, yes, thank heavens.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
if I remember, he said to me early, like if I had time to read it and provide a quote, and I started reading it, and I went, "Shit, this is this is what I was going to do." I couldn't even accuse him of
Well,
copying me. I hadn't done it yet.
I know
Anyway,
it's a problem we all face. It really
yes.
is. Um, so what I liked about this book, well, there's many things I liked about this book, but let's talk about Andrew. Andrew was such a great character because he has such a great sense of humor. And you're a funny guy. We all know that. But your character, Andrew, has such a dark, deliciously dark sense of humor. Just the way he observes things, the way he thinks about things, the way he speaks. I just got such a kick out of it. It reminded me of a movie called Blood Simple. Do you remember Blood
Hmm.
Simple? It's an old Cohen brothers movie.
I've
You
watched that
know?
movie twice during the pandemic. I've watched Blood Simple.
Oh, have you really? Well, it's the dark humor. It's very hard to write thrillers and put humor in them, but you do it successfully. When I write mine, I don't put any humor in them because to me it undercuts what I'm doing. But you're able to do it, and it doesn't hurt the tension. It adds to the tension. There's something about the way you use humor in your books. It's sort of it's the character. It's a part of the character's almost as defense mechanisms. It helps him deal with the stress. But I love the way Andrew's humor. Um, Actually, it was really entertaining, but it didn't undercut the tension in the book.
Well, I think the humor. I mean, the first four novels I wrote were about a character named Zach Walker, and those were what I call comic thrillers. So they were designed to be kind of funny. Whereas all the
Yeah.
books I have not been that kind of a thing. But I think that the
Mhm.
humor doesn't out of it's not deliberately funny. I think it comes out of kind of attitude and
Yeah.
sarcasm, so it's not laugh out loud kind of funny that's going to undercut tension. It's more kind of wise guyism. It's kind of like
Mhm.
when at the beginning of every Law and Order back when Briscoe was still around, he had some sort of quip about the dead body lying there. It had some sort of funny comment to make about it, and so it's kind of like that. It's just that
Mhm.
someone has a sort of wry sense of humor, or they see the dark side. But I think a lot of time humor comes out of quips and dialogue back and forth between people. I mean, I think of someone like Elmore Leonard. I mean, Elmore Leonard was a great thriller writer, but his books
Mhm.
are fun. I
Mhm.
think one of my ever is one of the Raylan Givens books, and Raylan, who was from like the character from Justified. And some tough guy is giving him a hard time. And Raylan can just beat the snot out of him. But this tough guy's giving him a hard time. But Raylan has to do something else right now. And so he says to the guy, "You practice falling down till I get back." Now, like, to me, that is just like the funniest line ever. But it's just comes out of Raylan's attitude. And he's sort of
Yeah.
cocksure kind of guy that he is. So, and I think that you have to be careful when you're writing thriller that if it gets too funny or gets too outrageous, then you will undercut that tension and it won't work. But I
Mhm.
think it comes out of that kind of attitude.
Mhm. Well, we see it in Andrew, and it's very enjoyable, and it it
Well,
it
you
it
know,
works well with.
and it's funny you should mention it because clearly has to be stuff that I completely do naturally without really thinking about it. Because now that you have mentioned it, I can't think of an example. Like I'm trying to think, oh, Andrew's funny. It doesn't. It doesn't. I don't
It is.
remember
It's
him.
just part of his point. Yeah, it's just part of his point of view. It's just there
Yeah,
in a very dark way, and it makes him a very distinctive character. Like if
yeah.
if
I
you
think
think about if you think about one thing this book has is it has some really great scenes, and it's so hard thrillers. I want to talk about the hand chopping scene, but I can't really because I can't explain how that scene is there without giving something away. But there is a scene where Andrew's involved in a hand chopping event where a
yes.
hand gets chopped off with a shovel. And I found that very entertaining. I don't know what that says about
Well,
me, but
the best part of that is that the hand is holding a gun,
yeah.
and the hand gets chopped off, and he kicks the hand away, and he thinks he better go get the gun in case he shoots him with it. And he thinks, well, that's going to be hard because he's disconnected from the hand, so he really probably, but yet he's still thinking I should really get the gun. But it's kind of like what's the. So it's that kind of, and I think that I mean it is darkly funny, but I think it also has to do with the fact that Andrew is just an ordinary guy caught up in an extraordinary circumstance. He's not a cop. He's not. He's a renovator, and so in an instant like that, I think, how does someone think who's never been in this kind of situation before. And so they're going to think like stupid stuff like, I better get the gun out of that hand, except that hand's not attached to anything. Maybe it's not that big, you know. So, but I don't think, now I think half the people watching are thinking, I can't read that book. But the other half are thinking, I have to read that
I
book.
have to read that book. See,
I have to
that felt really Coen Brothers to me. That whole scene, and even we can't talk about it, but how that scene was set up, like how that scene happened to be, how we got where he was with that situation was brilliant.
I'll take that as high praise because I think Blood Simple is
Mm-hmm.
one of the perfect thriller movies ever made. And
Yeah.
I watched it years ago and then I've watched it twice through the pandemic and starting more towards the beginning of the pandemic, but we're still doing it. Our son and his wife and Neitha, my wife and I, we have developed a kind of movie club. It was a way to keep in touch over the pandemic. So one of the four of us in turn picks a movie and then over the next 2 weeks watches it. And then on a Tuesday night at 7, we have a Zoom and we talk about it. And so Blood Simple was my pick a few months ago that everybody loved it. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the scenes in that movie. I mean, the hand reaching from one room to the other out the window, and then it's just so great. It's such a great movie.
Well, that's what I haven't seen Blood Simple in probably 30, 20 years, but that's what I thought of when I read that hand chopping scene with the shovel, and it was all like it's sort of realistic and absurd and entertaining and grisly, everything all at once, and it will really
It's every,
stick with me. That was
it's
what's
everything
that?
you could. It's everything
Everything
anybody
you could
could want.
want in a thriller scene. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Um, so I just wanted to say, yeah, I loved Andrew the character. I thought he was a real standout as a thriller character, and he has such a. We can't talk about the plot, but the ending in this book is so strong, and he's just a regular guy, Andrew, but he, I just like the way everything gets resolved with him, and how like an everyman kind of character can sort of, yeah, I don't want to give anything away, but I love the ending. Very
Well, there's
satisfying ending.
that the ending came together like a little Chinese puzzle. Everything just kind of comes together at the
Mm-hmm.
end. I had a lot of fun
Mm-hmm.
with that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's everyone. I mean, again, I have to be careful what I say, but um,
Yeah.
at least one or two other books that don't end on a high note necessarily, or they're not they're the kind of book where when you get to the last page and the book is done, but what the reader is left with is, oh hell, what happens now? How are they
Mm-hmm.
going to how on from this? I did that in like the third last paragraph of Trust Your Eyes. I introduced something at the very end, and as a reader, you have to think, oh crap, how are they going to handle this? And I loved endings like that. I know a lot of people like everything just wrapped up with a nice bow on it, but every once in a while, I like to do an ending that leaves you a little unsettled.
Yeah, I like that too. It leaves you feeling like things are going on afterwards, and you want to know what's going on afterwards, but you can't know, and you're left thinking about it. Like they go on living beyond the page, Um,
Yeah,
and this one has a nice sort of I don't I don't want to blow anything here, but there's a nice sort of moral ambiguity at the end that I really enjoyed. You know,
yeah. I
um,
like. Uh, and life doesn't wrap itself up in nice little bows. Life's not
no,
like
it really doesn't.
things
No.
left unresolved, or sometimes there's one little thread that's hanging that you just and it's not like you're left with what's happened. It's not like the questions aren't answered. But I like
Hmm.
leaving just thinking, oh, geez, what now? I mean, my two favorite movies ever are Hitchcock's Rear Window and Vertigo, and I'm back and forth as to which is my favorite. But I sometimes lean towards Vertigo because the last 5 minutes of Vertigo to me are the best last 5 minutes of any movie ever made, and the ending is like how that movie comes. That ending to me is just sort of chilling because it's not a happy ending, but it's so powerful. You know,
Hmm.
for you
Hmm.
kids that haven't seen a single Hitchcock movie, I would recommend it.
So I always admire your plots. You're a really good plotter. How do you approach a new book? I mean, obviously, you mentioned earlier that it sounds like sometimes you'll hold an idea for a long time, like you let something germinate for a while until it comes together for you. Like you carry ideas around. So when you finally decided on an idea or a hook for a book, do you have like a spidey sense or something that tells you when an idea is the right idea or it's going to really work? Or
Kind of, I think so. I think that's the one. That one I can make that work. But before I start, I know there's this. Everybody talks about plotters versus pantsers, as in seating your pants. You write a book, or you just haven't figured out ahead of time. And I kind of fall in the middle, in that I know the big picture. I won't start writing this until I know. Like when that woman pulls into the driveway and says, "Where's my house?" Before I've written the first word of that book, I know what happened. I know that part. So I know where I'm headed. I know how the sort of resolution. I know who's done what. But I don't see the opportunities that exist in the book until I start getting into it. So I think of it as kind of, if you're going to drive from New York to LA, you know, you know where you're going to end up, but there are 100 routes to take. And so that's how it is for me. I may have certain scenes in my head that are coming, and I have a sense of the big picture, but I don't. I have to find my way to get to that end point, but I know what it is. I maybe because my father, when he was young, was a carpenter. Before he became a commercial illustrator, but I figure I wouldn't start building a house without blueprints. I don't know what furniture is going in the house. I don't know what the drapes will look like. I don't know when I'm going to paint it, but I know the structure. I know the foundation, and I know it's 2 stories, and so forth. So I want to know the big picture before I begin.
So I had a question for you about that, and I've just gone right out of my head.
That's okay.
Oh well, I'll move on to the next one.
Hey, let's move on to the geography class.
No, I was going to do the chemistry questions or the physics questions.
No,
I want to know what your secret is to Wordle. I want to know how you get Wordle in 2. That's sheer luck, right?
For those who don't know, I'm sure the whole world is just dying to know what everybody's Wordle score is. Like that's just become this thing on Twitter. Who cares? But I did. I don't know how it happened. Today I got 2. It was a complete fluke that I got it in 2. I looked at it and I thought, how could that have happened? But anyway,
it's got to be fluke.
It was a fluke.
Yeah. Oh, I remember what it was now. This thing about spidey senses and knowing when you've got the right idea. Have you ever been wrong? Have you ever had an idea that you thought, oh yeah, this is great, and then you just couldn't make it work?
Oh,
I've had one like that.
I have an even better story. I had an idea that I thought would work, and I wrote the whole book. And
oh no.
Yeah. So, quick story. So I had No Time for Goodbye had come out, was a huge hit. The book first after that, Too Close to Home, had come out, and it was doing very well. And I saw the book after that I was writing, and I gave it to our mutual agent. And even as I was writing the book, I thought, I know there's problems in this, but I'm sure I can fix them later. And so she read the book, and she said, let's have lunch. That's not a good sign. Let's have lunch. And when she sat down, she said, this book is publishable. This is publishable. But after 2 big hit books, you can't go into the marketplace with a book that's okay. It's got to be great. And she said, what a holy mess this book is. And just
sounds like her.
And she said, you could write another book from scratch in less time than it would take to fix all the things that aren't working in this book. So I came home.
Because you're a fast writer.
Yeah. So I came home. I thought about stepping in front of a bus for a couple of days, or jumping out a window. 2-story house. I probably just would have broken a finger. And so I already had been thinking about what I might write next, and I thought, I'm going to write that book down. And so, in kind of a mad panic, I wrote what would become Fear the Worst. I wrote that book in 7 weeks. And I think it's one of my best books, actually. And so that whole book has just, I've never tried to fix it. I've never looked at it again. I haven't spent 5 minutes on it. But I don't feel badly about the 3 or whatever months I spent writing that book, because it taught me a really valuable lesson. And that was, if there's a little voice in my head that's saying it's not working, stop. So, and I just kept on going. And so I haven't made that mistake since. So,
Well, they're all learning experiences, right? I mean, you learn something from every book you write, even if it's a bad one. I learned I had one that I quit after 30, 40,000 words. I'm glad I didn't finish it. But, you always feel bad about that, but you always learn something from it. So, I
oh
mean,
yeah,
every writer I know has one of those,
yeah.
So if they say, oh, no, everything I've ever written has always turned out beautifully, there's something there.
And
Most
I don't
books
know if
have a book.
I
Yeah.
I don't think I have a paper copy of that book. I think that book is still on my computer somewhere. But if I should ever reach the kind of status where people want to print my stuff after I plop my plug, I should just absolutely delete that thing. It can't come out.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah, I know how you
has to,
feel.
but
How
yeah,
much time?
but that's, sorry, go ahead.
So, how much time do you spend writing versus rewriting?
Well, it depends on the book. So, No
Okay.
Time for Goodbye, that was like lightning in a bottle. I mean, I wrote that book I think I wrote No Time for Goodbye in 7 or 8 weeks, and there was very little editing on it. So I think I might have spent, when it came back to me for notes and stuff, I might have spent a week on it. But so that was great.
Uh,
But then you get a book like The Accident, which and A Tap on the Window. The Accident and A Tap on the Window are the two hard books that just about killed me. A Tap on the Window, um, that I think it probably took me 2.5 to 3 months to write a first draft. And then when everybody read it and felt that there were things that weren't working. And what was wrong with that book was it was foundational. It was like the underpinnings of the story were what were not working. And I had to find a whole new under and then put everything back on top of it. And so rewriting that book probably took me as long as it took to write the first draft. So that one was a struggle, and The Accident to some degree as well was a really hard book to do in the rewriting. But those are the two worst ones. So in those cases,
you're
sorry, go ahead.
you're making me hate you right now, Linwood. You're
Well,
making me hate you because I spend for every freaking book I do, I spend as much time rewriting as I do writing. And they're all like that. But it could be because I don't have any idea where it's going when I start. So that's probably why I spend more time rewriting than you do. Do you
well,
spend a
there's
lot of time at the front end before you start writing? Like, tell me you spend months thinking before you start writing.
oh, it's probably better
Or
I
do you
don't
just,
answer that. You're just going to get angrier.
no, no,
Here's
I want to know the truth. Inquiring minds want to know. How do you do it?
once once I decide that I have my really good what if, and I think this is the one, I will take out a notebook and I'll start making notes and scribble a few things in pages, and I'll probably do that for maybe a week or 2 weeks, just sort of scribbling, and then I get bored doing that, and by that time I understand the really big picture and where I want to end up. So I figured I'm start writing because I'm sick of just making notes. So then I start writing, and so probably if we count as just sort of thinking about it, I mean, I'll start probably writing a new book in October. And so between now and October, occasionally I'll think, oh, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. But then probably 1st of October, I think it's time to get serious, sit down, make some notes, figure out what's going to be. And then before the end of the month, I'll probably start writing. And I would hope to have a first draft, maybe not by Christmas, but maybe mid-January is kind of how I work. And then I will put it away for a few days, and then I'll go back, and then I'll go through the whole book, and that usually takes me about a week. And then I send it off, and we send it to the publishers, and then I wait. That's the worst part for me, is waiting to hear from my editor. That's like waiting to get tests back from the doctor's office. Is
Yeah.
it mine or not, and so that's, like the book I delivered in March to my editor, the book that will come out next year. Finally got a note last week. Love it, and I thought, I'm gonna live, but but I think a lot of it has to do with having spent 30 years in newspapers. I don't.
Yeah, that's
For
gonna
me,
help.
you get to work and you get it done. And so for half of my career in newspapers, I was a columnist and had to write 3 columns every week. So you couldn't call the city editor and say, the muse just didn't strike today. I can't do it. I have columnist block. That's not gonna fly. So I'm used to not being precious about the work and just sit down and just crank it out. So that's when briefly, for 6 months, I was doing some dipping my toe into screenplay, and I was writing a pilot for a 6-part series based on my book Trust Your Eyes, and I was doing it for a big time director, a guy named Martin Campbell, who directed Casino Royale, the Bond movie, and so forth. So I'd be on a conference call, and they'd say, here's a 50-page script, and there's changes on like every page, tweak this to this, to this, to this, to this, and they would expect, I would then, after I got a phone call, I would go at these fixes and generally kind of send it back to them the next day, and they were expecting it in 3 weeks, and I thought, well, this shit doesn't take that long, and but that's working
And
in
film in
newspaper.
general just takes so long.
Oh,
Film
it's
in general,
crazy.
don't you find? Oh, they're nuts. They're so slow.
That's kind of why I don't even want to be bothered with it anymore. So, but it just, I mean, I can remember nights working at the Star when I was an editor. I was an editor for a long time at the Star, and it's 7:30 at night. Paper has to be heading for the presses by 10:30. We've got 3 hours left, and at 7:30, what will be the main front page story drops into my lap, and the whole thing is asked backwards. It's a 2,000-word story, and everything that's at the back needs to be at the front, all this sort of stuff. And I could take that story, and I could sit down with an editor, and I could rewrite it from beginning to end in an hour. And so when you've spent 30 years doing that,
Yeah.
a book in 3 months is not that big a deal.
Mhm. I think we agree on that whole let's not be precious about our writing approach and being very disciplined. I think we're both like that. I think if you anyone who writes a thriller a year like you and I do, you have to be like that. I mean, you can't just be a dilettante and wait for the muse. Like everyone I know who's a successful crime writer is a professional first, very
Yeah.
disciplined. They know their craft. It's not precious and self indulgent at all.
I mean, imagine if your toilet was overflowing, and you called the plumber, and the plumber said, I'd love to come, but I've got plumber's block. I'm not feeling it today. I just can't do it. I don't feel in the mood. I don't have the inspiration. And you're thinking, yeah, but my toilet's overflowing. I can't do it. But writers, we could say, oh, I have the vapors. I just have writer's block. I can't do it. Everybody goes, oh, we understand. You're a writer. It's okay. It's okay. You
Yeah.
just relax. Have it lie down. It's like,
No one ever says that to a crime writer. No one ever says, "Oh, lie down, little crime writer." You know, no one ever. Do you ever get that feeling that you're being, oh, you poor crime writer, take a day off? No one ever says take a day off.
no, crank that
No.
crap out, man. We need it.
Yeah, I
Although I
know.
have
I know.
But one example, I mean, I sometimes, those of us who are really on the treadmill of a book a year, because everybody wants their new Shari Lapena every year, or their new Linwood Barclay, or Michael Connelly, or Lee Child, and literary writers years and years to write something, and we think, give me a break, and yet, I read someone like Wayne Johnson, who I think is just brilliant, and I'll
Yeah.
read one. He does a book about every 3 or 4 years. And I'll read one of his and I'll think, if you gave me 10 years, I couldn't do this.
Yeah,
So,
I really admire him too. Yeah.
so
I haven't read
I'll
his
have,
latest one.
I'm sorry?
Mhm. I haven't read his latest one, but I want to. The new Wayne Johnson. I got it for my
It,
mom for Christmas.
It's
Brilliant, isn't
really
it?
dark. It's really the latest one is it's really dark, but it's a
Yeah,
masterpiece. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have heard that. Um, do you have a favorite character in Take Your Breath Away? Do
Hmm.
you have favorite characters?
Well, I mean, I like
Points of view
Andrew.
you like to spend more time with? I liked Andrew a lot.
I kind of like the teenage kid that's living with him, but
Hmm.
his, and I kind of like the older ailing mother character who's in the hospital because
Hmm.
she doesn't get any guff from anybody, and she's a long time newspaper editor at one time. Now been retired for many years. I kind of like her because she's tough. Um, and but I don't know. I kind of I hadn't really thought about whether there are particular characters I like more than others in that book. When I look back over all the books that I have done, there are two or three characters that jump out at me that I really like Chloe in Fine Jewelry, I just love, and Barbara from Elevator Pitch, and I think it's Patty from Fear the Worst. Patty, I think, is the most tragic, sad figure. But I love her. So I have characters, and Thomas from Trust Your Eyes are favorites. But so there's sort of various ones over the years that mean more to me.
Hmm. It's funny how you connect with certain characters and they resonate with you long after. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and Thomas in some ways is who is this map obsessed um, individual who has some serious mental issues and so forth in that book. He's in very much in some ways inspired by my brother, and so that's a very different kind of book for me.
Hmm. Hmm.
But yeah, but I mean,
Um,
Patty from Fear the Worst, I love. But anyway, yeah.
yeah. Um, but what's the best writing advice you've ever been given by anyone?
Writing advice? Well,
Yeah. I know a lot of people that watch these things are interested in writing, and they want to know, they want to hear your advice, they want to know good
I think
tips.
I think of a couple. Well, first of all, when I was writing a memoir, in fact, here it is here. When I did this book came out uh, 22 years ago. It's a memoir,
It's a
and
great title.
yeah, it's about when I, as my teens, I ran a trailer park and cottage resort, and um, uh, the editor or the publisher at McClellan Stewart, who I was dealing with in that, said, kind of, this came out of I was writing a column. Says, you don't need a joke in every paragraph. Like, let it stuff build. You let because I was used to writing 600-word newspaper columns, and every paragraph had to be. He said, let it breathe. You can kind of let it go out and so forth, which was helpful advice. Um,
Hmm.
I got some from our mutual agent. I got a very good advice when I was working on my first novel, and I had 2/3 of it done. And because she's very good at on plot issues, she said to me, "Who did it?" Like she was, who is the killer in this book? And I said, "Well, it's either." She said, "Stop." When I said, "Well, it's either this," she said, "Stop. Don't write another word until you figure out the rest of the book." And that was extremely helpful advice.
Hmm.
And way back when I was in my late teens and early 20s, I actually had a long correspondence with my literary hero, who was the writer Ross MacDonald, who wrote the Lee Archer novels. And I actually, to the point that I spent an entire evening with him and had dinner with him when I was 20, 21 years old. And he had read. I was trying to be a novelist in my early 20s, and he read my books, and he talked about the importance of subplots and getting more, other characters and other sort of secondary stories that are sort of under in various layers and so forth. So those are three that kind of immediately come to mind.
Um, I want wanted to talk to you about, you know, we've talked a bit about it. Some books are easier than others. Um, it sounds to me like, I find that every book is difficult, but some are a little bit easier than others. But it sounds to me like with you, some books are quite easy and some are quite difficult. Every book is quite different for you. Um, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, I actually have a second. This is a year where I have two books coming out,
I wanted to
which
talk about that. Tell us about.
okay, which kind of makes up for the fact that because of the pandemic and the changes in pub dates and all that stuff, there wasn't a book in 2020, and so things got shuffled. So we're for lost time here, but there's a second book coming out this year, and this was a book that just wrote itself, and the
This is
final
Look
draft.
Both Ways, right?
It's a book called Look Both Ways, and
Yeah.
it's got a weird publishing schedule. It's going to be available first as an ebook in the UK and the US, but it won't be in Canada until the end of October, and there'll be an ebook and a print edition. And Look Both Ways is a bit of a departure for me in that it's more like a Michael Crichton kind of a thriller. It's sort of not quite sci-fi, but what it's about, I describe it this way. Think Jurassic Park, but instead of dinosaurs, it's self-driving cars. And this is a Martha's Vineyard kind of island community where a big car manufacturer wants to test autonomous self-driving vehicles and figures
Like Tesla?
the best way to do it, like a Tesla, sorry, but the best way to do it is if every car on the road is a self-driving car. So everyone agrees to surrender their regular vehicles to the mainland, and everyone is given for a month one of these little self-driving little jelly bean things that will take them all over the place. And on the day of the big grand media event, a virus gets introduced into the system, and all of the cars become essentially homicidal. And so you're on an island with basically 1,000 Christines. And I had so much fun writing this book. And I wrote it, God, I think I wrote it at least 3 years ago. And all this time, my publishers have been like, "We really love this book, but we don't know what to do with it because it's not like what you typically
It's
do."
different.
So,
Yeah.
so we're not offering it as sort of the usual annual Barclay thriller. It's an extra. So you'll still get what you would kind of expect from me, but you've got an extra book this year, and it's this one, Look Both Ways. And and I'm very curious to see how it's received because I have an idea for another thriller that I think would fall into that kind of genre, that category. And I could start writing it tomorrow, but I need to know whether they want it. You know what I mean? When you stray out of your
Yeah.
lane, hey, what are you doing? That kind of thing. So,
Yeah, it's tricky, don't you think, with crime writers like us, where you have a following, a readership
yep.
that likes a certain kind of book, and publishers, of course, are reluctant to mess with that. So they don't
Yeah,
want you going out of your lane. And that, in
that's
a
right.
way, is a bit of a. Go ahead.
And, and so it's like, so at one point I thought, well, then maybe we should put it out under a different name. But then they went, well, no, we don't
I
want to
was
do
just going
that
to ask you that.
because people know who you are. So we want to
Yeah.
capitalize on that kind of. But I've written a foreword in the book that kind of explains, hey, this is a bit different. And I've always loved car. I grew up surrounded with car imagery because, back in the late through the 50s, all car ads were illustration instead of photography in magazines, Life, Look, Saturday Post, car brochures. And my dad drew those cars. That was his job. With these beautiful airbrushed, magnificent drawings. And so I was always surrounded by all this car imagery in it. And I've always loved cars. And what I really love is that they are going to use on the title page one of my father's illustrations, which is
Really?
it makes me feel, just warms my heart. I'm so happy about it.
That is
You know?
really nice. That is a
Yeah.
really nice.
If you know what, we're gonna do something really cool here. Don't go away. I'm gonna just show
Okay,
you
you're gonna get us a picture. Okay, hang on, everybody.
as far as I'm going. So this is one of my father's illustrations that I have framed in my office, and this is the one that we're using on the title page. So,
Oh,
Cadillac,
ooh,
this
oh,
beautiful,
so nice. It's
this
like a
beautiful,
Mad Men thing.
yeah, this beautiful '59 Cadillac with the massive
Yeah.
fins is actually kind of also a character in the book. It's the only car left on the island that's like a legit car, and
Ooh,
yeah.
and the hero?
So, pardon? It's kind of
Is it the
hero, but it's
hero? Does it?
kind of its hero. So, but
Mm.
it's not supernatural. It's not anything like that. It's got somebody behind the wheel. But we're going to use that illustration in the book. So I'm pumped about that.
And
Little
can you
something
talk about this? Can you talk about this other idea, or you don't want to talk about this other idea
about
that you
which.
might do? The other idea for this kind of genre that you might do if
Oh,
this one,
I can't talk about the other one because
yeah.
it's such a. I mean, we were talking earlier about sort of high concept ideas. It's
Mhm.
such a great and such a great high concept idea that I think it'd be just fantastic. But
Mhm.
it's question is, do people want that kind of a book from me? I think I'm going to write it regardless, and
Mhm.
we'll figure out do it. But it's I don't know if it'll be sort of the main annual thriller or not. That's still to be
Sometimes I
worked
think
out.
we have to trust our readers to be willing to get something new from
Yeah,
us. You know?
I'll I'll tell you about it when we're offline. I'll tell you what it is.
Okay. Um, I always like to ask writers when I interview them about their secret snack because I'm obsessed with when I'm writing what my secret snack is. And I eat a lot of dark chocolate. And I can't remember if I've asked you this before, but what's your secret snack when you're writing?
Well, I don't have any food with me while I'm working. Up in the I mean,
Really?
I don't have food where I'm working, but I have coffee or something to drink. But every once in a while, I go downstairs and I open up the closet and I think Cheetos. I need Cheetos. So either that or some Orville Redenbacher salted popcorn, a big bag of that.
Popcorn.
So I'll have a few bites of that, just sort of fuel, and then I'll go
Mhm.
back upstairs. But I don't have any food in the actual office here.
You know, it's
But
funny because I ask this about everyone I interview, and the women all snack when they write, almost all of
really
them. And the men, not so much. Not so much.
interesting.
I think Harlan Coben was the only one who actually admitted to snacking when writing, unless I've got this wrong. And it was some kind of a strange frozen yogurt. But the women we're all eating dark chocolate all the time. You guys have more
Well,
discipline.
here's the other question. Here's one for you because I hear this one. Do you have music on or anything or background when you
No,
work?
nothing. I need total silence. And if I have any kind of distraction, like today, it was Grand Central Station around here. You think you live in the country, Linwood? You think you move to the country? Nobody will drop by. Well, the impact people drop by. The solar people drop by. Everyone's dropping by all the time. I tell you.
I can live.
So yeah,
I
no
just
music for
I can't work with music. I love
me.
music, but I can't write with it because that just
No.
distracts me. What I love is this is of course this is publication week, so I'm doing events like this. So yesterday
Yeah.
morning I'm doing I did a TV thing in the morning, and then I'm about to do a radio thing, and of course right behind this computer is this big huge window, and there's the street right down here in Toronto, and of course just before I'm about to do it, who rolls up in front right next door? Big tree trimming service with a wood chipper. Now, and so the whole house sounds like we've got chainsaws in every room. So, and I think, so I had to take a laptop and I went to the back of the house, to the back corner of the basement to go to escape to a place where you couldn't hear the wood chipper. So, it's always something.
Yeah. It's always something, but a wood chipper is such a good thing for a crime writer. You and I have talked about wood chippers.
Great thing for a crime writer, except when you're trying to do an interview. Now,
Yes, yes. Then you can't hear anything.
I
We're
guess
still
it's
waiting
like,
for our wood chipper to arrive.
sorry.
We're still waiting for our wood chipper to arrive. It's been delayed. You and I have
Oh,
joked about the wood chipper and what I'm going to do with it. I have some
well,
plans for that wood chipper.
they had to come here first. Now, if they were
Yeah,
putting, limbs or something in it and body parts, I would have looked and thought, well, this is perfect. But it was just trees,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Um, I think that's all I have in mind. I was thinking we would have some questions, but we don't have questions today. So unless there's
No,
something else, It's
What do you know?
5 to 8. Unless there's something else you want to mention about your book. I mean, I really wish we could talk about these more fully, because there are certain twists in this book that I thought were just bang on. But all I can say is it's super twisty, and you don't see what's coming. And of course, we can't talk about it. So that's too bad when you talk about thrillers. But yeah,
Well, I think we should just tell people that yes, the price of gas is going up, but you really need books more. You know, and summer's coming, and you need
yeah,
something to pass the time because you won't be able to afford to buy gas or go anywhere anyway. So get a book
right.
and just
Stay
and
home.
that's
Yes,
that's
and
the way to do it.
I think we were told early on that we were to mention that buying a book makes you far more sexy and attractive and intellectual. So everyone should buy a book, and you look even more sexy and attractive if you buy a book from independent bookstore.
And how sexy
That's
does
it.
it make you if you write a book? I mean, it's just off the scale. It's just so.
Maybe for you, but for me.
Oh,
But yeah, so buy a book and read it, and you'll just feel so sexy and attractive and intellectual that you won't recognize yourself. So I think if you're looking for a book to buy, this is a great one. Um, and what do you after this? You must be working on another book now
I've
for
delivered.
next.
I have delivered next
Did
year's
you
book.
say you've delivered next year's already?
Yeah,
You,
I've delivered next
I
year's
hate
book.
you, Linwood.
I ex- I expect
I
to get.
hate you.
I
What?
know. I understand. I've delivered it in March. So, but I expect to get my notes back on them in June sometime. So I'll take a week or two in June to sort of tweak it. But then I don't really have to start to sit down and work again until I would say like the fall, and then I would be writing the 2024 book at that point. So
Mhm.
so
I would like to
I'm
put you through a
oh
wood chipper right now.
boy,
I
it's
really would.
good thing you're at a distance. But really sorry. What can I say? How
I
about
don't
you?
know.
Have you where are you in the
I'm,
process?
I'm, oh, I took a year off, so I'm at the point where I'm in edits, and I'll have my book in, 9 months early this year instead of right at the deadline. So I'm sort of trying to do the Linwood model where I get stuff in early. It's a new thing for me. I would like it. I would like to get stuff in earlier, and then I can
Well, the first
you
time
know.
I met years ago when I did an event when I with Ian Rankin in Burlington, Ontario, and I was sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I delivered my book early," and he looked at me like, "You idiot." He's just like, if you give it to them too soon, it gives them too much time to mess around with it. And I thought,
There's some
"Oh
truth
yeah,
in that.
yeah,
There is some
that's
truth
right."
in that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought learning from the master at an early time.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, I guess we can say goodnight. And I just want to end with I will see you at Motive, the new Toronto Crime Festival, June the
Yes,
3rd to the 5th. And I understand you're doing an event, a keynote event, or what are you doing
yeah,
at the Crime Festival?
a solo event on the Sunday. And for those who might be watching outside of Ottawa, this will be my only in person GTA event where I could actually sign a book for people. But on the
Mm,
Sunday, June 5th, I will be, yeah, I'm going to blather on for a better part of an hour. I'll just kind of make it up when I get there. And
mhm.
also have, this is even closer for people in Ottawa. I'm doing a week from Friday. They can Google this, but there's the Belleville Mayor's Arts Festival, and which is not far from our place in Prince Edward County. And I'm going to be doing an in-person event in Belleville a week from Friday. So if anybody wants to race down from Ottawa and get an actual autographed copy, there's your chance.
I went to high school in Belleville.
I know
Well, drag me.
I wasn't gonna wrap it. It's a
I know the
lovely town.
Quinty Mall. I know the Quinty Mall is revented the Quinty Mall.
I was in the Queenie Mall. I posted a picture from the Queenie Mall on Friday because the Shoppers Drug Mart in Queenie Mall already had my book out 4 days early. They had it in their little book section, and so if you and so I'm very impressed with that mall now.
Yeah, I guess you would be. And there's an
I mean,
Indigo there now.
was right next door. They didn't even have it, but the Shoppers Drug Mart had it. And you could also go in and buy like shampoo at the same time.
And maybe get another vaccination. Got all
True.
Shoppers. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep. Yep. Well, I will see you in Toronto then at all the
Yep,
parties. And
See you,
that'll be
and or wave at you as we're going by on the 401.
yeah, that's true. What are you driving these days?
Well, you know, I have a car. I have, I have, I have a little. We have a couple little nice cars. I'll be one of those. You've frozen. I wonder if it's over. I think it must be over.
I think she hung up by mistake. Can you hear me?
I can hear you vaguely.
Okay, I'll go into the other room. I'm gonna stop the stream here.
Okay.